today we are examining a thesis that redefines the very nature of existence. We will explore the proposition that our universe is not constructed from material components such as particles or energy, but rather from a fundamental geometric architecture.
This is the core premise. It posits that everything we observe and measure, the entire empirical world, is the consequence of a deeper, inescapable logic, a framework of structural constraints that dictates what is possible.
We will deconstruct this concept in 5 logical stages. First, the thesis of reality. Second, the axis of identity. Third, the axis of relation. Fourth, the governing law, which we will call the budget of being. And finally, the geometric consequences that arise from this framework.
We begin with a fundamental question. What is the absolute minimum requirement for any reality to exist in a coherent state? The search is not for a smallest particle, but for the most basic structural pattern that permits both stability and interaction.
The proposed answer is that the foundational unit of reality is not a static, dimensionless point. It is, instead, a dynamic structure formalized as the 1 plus I cell. This immediately implies that from its very origin, the universe operates through the dynamic interplay of 2 irreducible conjugate magnitudes.
Let us first analyze the real component of this cell, represented by the number 1. This corresponds to the axis of identity. It is the anchor of existence, the very principle of being something definite and specific. This axis is defined as factual retention, denoted by the variable u. It is formed strictly by the product of 2 ontological operations: distinction, the capacity to differentiate, and retention, which allows that differentiation to persist. U, therefore, is the source of identity, stability, and what we perceive as mass. Without this component, a system would lack ontological definition and collapse into absolute indeterminacy.
However, for a universe to manifest complexity, entities cannot merely exist in isolation, they must interact. Orthogonal to the axis of identity, we find the second, equally essential component. This is the imaginary axis, denoted by I. It must be understood that the term imaginary here does not imply unreality. Rather, it signifies a geometric necessity for interaction.
This axis is defined as relational coherence, or the variable v. It is formed exclusively by the product of 2 other operations: composition, the ability to form connections, and non-exclusion, which preserves the space of all compatible possibilities. V represents the potential for interaction, the phase space of relations, the domain of what enables. The imaginary unit, I, is therefore the geometric signature that identity requires an orthogonal dimension in order to interact without self-annihilation. The dichotomy, then, is stark. The real axis, U, pertains to being, identity, and what definitively is. The imaginary axis, V, pertains to relating, potential, and what is possible. Every entity in existence, therefore, represents a precise conserved distribution between these 2 fundamental poles. This distribution is not arbitrary. The universe does not randomly oscillate between being and relating. This trade-off is governed by a strict and inviolable law. What then is this governing principle? What is the master equation that dictates the fundamental economy of existence itself? This is the master equation. It states that the sum of the square of factual retention, U, and the square of relational coherence, V, is invariably equal to a constant, the total capacity of the system, K squared. K squared represents the finite ontological budget. This defines existence as a zero-sum economy distributed between factual retention and relational phase. To increase U, to become more defined and actualized, a system must necessarily decrease its V, its relational potential. Conversely, to increase relational potential, a system must sacrifice a degree of its defined identity. It is impossible to maximize both simultaneously. And this economic trade-off maps directly onto the 2 regimes of modern physics. The classical regime is a high U, low V reality, where objects possess definite mass and position. The quantum regime, in contrast, is a low U, high V reality, where entities exist as fields of potential, their ontological budget allocated primarily to relational phase rather than to fixed identity. This leads us to the final and most profound implication of this framework: the primacy of structure over substance. The central conclusion is this: the complexity and nonlinearity of the universe are not physical accidents.
They are the inescapable geometric necessities imposed by the 1 plus I cell. The laws of physics, therefore, emerge from the constraints of this finite ontological budget. Structure is not something that appears within reality. Structure is reality.
If the blueprint of reality is indeed a geometric constraint, then what are we to make of space, time, and consciousness? This framework suggests they may not be the fundamental stage on which existence unfolds, but are themselves emergent properties, consequences of this deeper, structural architecture.